Là anh có người anh ở bên Thái Lan gì đó, có người
Dạ, bên Thái Lan tên là Nguyễn Liêu.
rồi bây giờ anh tự giới thiệu nhé, tôi tên là cái gì ở Thái Lan,
Dạ.
tôi sau này tới nhé. Rồi vâng, xin không cần, xin vui lòng tự giới thiệu.
Tôi tên là Quang. Tôi hiện giờ ở cái nhà, tôi có một người em là Nguyễn Liêu đang trốn thoát và đang tị nạn tại Thái Lan.
Vì lý do nào người em của ông tị nạn tại Thái Lan?
Vì em tôi đã bị nhà cầm quyền bắt bớ, đánh đập, và đặc biệt có một điều là em tôi đã tham gia vô cái đám tang của bà Phụ Nhu, và em tôi đã có những cái chuyển hình ảnh, chuyển tin tức cho tôi, và khi mà nhà cầm sản bắt và khi đó được tháo về thì em tôi đã bị cầm quyền khủng bố tinh thần, rồi điện thoại của em tôi và thấy rằng là có hình ảnh và có những số phụ lưu trữ mà em tôi đã được phỏng vấn từ nước ngoài, từ Đài Loan đây. Thì khi mà em tôi biết được cái tin đó thì em tôi biết rằng là nó sẽ tìm cách để mà nó bắt mình và nó sẽ đánh đập, cho nên em tôi phải trốn thoát, vì tất cả những cái đó rất là quan trọng, cho nên em tôi trốn thoát qua Thái Lan là như vậy.
Xin cảm ơn ông Quang rất nhiều. Cảm ơn. Dạ.
I want to begin the hearing, and before I do, I want to thank all the witnesses. But before I thank the witnesses, I want to particularly thank two people, Congressman Gao, who led the effort and asked that this hearing be held, and then shortly after he did, I was hit from the other side by Congressman Chris Smith, and there are not two people who are more committed on this issue than both of them. So I want to thank both of them for bringing this to the committee's attention and asking that there be a hearing. And both have come in from out of town for this hearing. So one, the Vietnamese community should know that because of Congressman Gao, the hearing's being held, and he came in, and Congressman Smith the same way, who came in from out of town. But I just want to thank them for bringing this to the committee's attention. I want to thank all the witnesses for being here today to discuss the current status of human rights, religious freedom in Vietnam, as well as Congressman Smith and Gao for their leadership. I understand the Vietnamese government has its own TV here, so as we speak, if we want to send a message, I hope it will be very fair and objective, that they'll send this back to the Vietnamese government so they can see what takes place in this hearing. Unfortunately, Vietnam's human rights record remains a disgrace, despite its ascension to the World Trade Organization, a move that many had hoped would bring political as well as economic liberalization. I fear that when the United States granted Vietnam normal trade relations in 2001, we lost crucial leverage with which to pressure the Vietnamese government to improve its very, very poor record on human rights. Over the last year, we have seen Vietnam's record on human rights and religious freedom take a turn for the worse. In 2010 annual report on freedom in the world, the non-governmental organization Freedom House noted that the Vietnamese government, quote, continued to seize land for development in 2009 despite the global economic downturn, and those who protested such moves were harshly punished, end of quote. The case of Can Dai Parish in the Diocese of Da Nang, which we will hear more about from our witnesses, exemplifies this trend. Earlier this year, local authorities decided to demolish all the houses in the parish, along with a 135-year-old cemetery on the parish grounds, to make way for a green resort. The residents of Can Dai who have protested the expropriation of their land by the Vietnamese government have faced beatings, torture, imprisonment, and even death. This is not an isolated case. Violations of religious freedom abound throughout Vietnam. Both Protestant and Catholic and Buddhists alike all face persecution at the hands of the Vietnamese government. According to the NGO Human Rights Watch, in 2009, authorities arrested dozens of Montagnard Christians accused of belonging to unregistered house churches, and on several occasions police beat and shocked parishioners with electric batons when they refused to sign pledges to join the government's approved church. In December, orchestrated mobs, which included undercover police officers and local Communist Party officials assaulted several hundred Buddhist monks and nuns for 3 days. The repression continued in January as Hanoi police officers attacked the Catholic Church, injured several people, and destroying a crucifix. Despite these egregious violations of religious freedom, Vietnam was removed from the State Department's list of countries of particularly concern, or CPCs, in 2006. Is there anybody here from the State Department? The State Department didn't even send a rep. Oh, you're here. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you very much. I, along with a number of my colleagues in Congress, have called on the Obama administration to redesignate Vietnam as a CPC. I understand that the State Department will designate CPCs in the coming months, and I urge the department to have Vietnam back on this list. And after looking at the record and seeing what's taken place, it will really be a black mark on the administration if Vietnam is not put back on the list. In addition to suppressing religious freedom over the last year, the Vietnamese government has ratcheted up pressure on peaceful human rights and democracy advocates, arresting numerous bloggers, lawyers, and political activists. I've been disappointed with the U.S. Embassy in Vietnam, which has repeatedly subordinated issues of human rights and religious freedom to trade and commerce. The U.S. Embassy in Vietnam should serve as an island of freedom which welcomes and supports dissidents. I remain hopeful. I believe in my lifetime we will see the fall of the communist government in Vietnam and see the day that the people of Vietnam will taste freedom after years of repression. Again, I'd like to thank all the witnesses for being here. Before we introduce you, I want to turn to Congressman Gal, who initially asked for the hearing and is the leader on the issue of human rights and religious freedom in Vietnam and other places. Issue like this on the floor, you can always guarantee that Congressman Smith is down there speaking out. So, Congressman Gal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to, on behalf of the Vietnamese American community, to personally thank you and thank Congressman Smith for your tireless efforts in the past 20 plus years advocating for human rights and religious freedom in Vietnam. Without your dedication, without your commitment, I believe that we could not have gone as far as we have in the past 20 years in trying to improve the conditions that will enable the Vietnamese people to eventually achieve democracy and religious freedom in our homeland. So again, I'd like to thank you, both you and Chris Smith, for your dedication and tireless efforts on behalf of the Vietnamese American communities. Obviously, the subject of this hearing today is the Vietnamese government's recent abuses in the village of Con Dao, which is part of a much larger problem that has existed in Vietnam ever since the communists took over South Vietnam in 1975. After the Vietnam War, close to 1 million soldiers and civilians were sent to hundreds of so-called re-education camps. These compounds were in reality a kind of cross between a Nazi-style concentration camp and a Soviet-style labor camp. According to a 1985 article in the Wall Street Journal, as many as 60,000 of these political detainees were summarily executed or died of starvation, disease, or exhaustion. Since 1989, the U.S. has resettled 30,000 re-education camp survivors and approximately 150,000 of their family members from Vietnam under the Humanitarian Operation, or the HO program. My parents are the beneficiary of the HO program. These individuals make up arguably the most neurologically impaired group of refugees ever resettled to the United States. Focus group studies conducted from 1998 to 1999 by the humanitarian organization Boat People SOS and the Center for Multicultural Human Services in Falls Church, Virginia, identified some of the shocking types of torture these survivors had been exposed to. Those findings corroborate results of a 5-year study conducted jointly by the Indo-Chinese Psychiatry Clinic of the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center and the Harvard Program in Refugee Trauma. It found that among survivors tested, 90% had post-traumatic stress disorder, 49% had major depression. Another study conducted by Boat People SOS and funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration suggested that as many as 80% of the torture survivors suffered cognitive impairments. According to that study, the spouses of torture survivors also display severe symptoms of traumatization. And I speak not just on the basis of the findings of those clinical studies, but also from my personal experience. As I've stated, my father spent 7 years in the re-education camps, and he continues to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as other physical ailments as a result of his time spent in these camps. And when you're talking about the psychological and emotional impacts of the torture survivors, a simple display of an otherwise harmless symbol or image, such as the red flag of coming to Vietnam, may trigger flashbacks or nightmares, activate existing symptoms of depression and anxiety, or reverse the modest progress achieved through years of treatment. We should be mindful of the long-term symptoms of torture. It is also our moral obligation to denounce the use of torture by governments to control the public and suppress dissident voices. Today, of why we have this hearing. The Vietnamese government has shown no progress on the issue of human rights, and they have shown no sign of any intent to improve. As Vietnam enforces the communist system of land ownership, all land is supposed to belong to the people. Land is managed by the government on their behalf. People possess land use rights, not land ownership. This means the government can strip real property from people and organizations without just compensation or support for resettlement. In the name of progress, farmers have been stripped of their homes and farms, which the government has turned over to private developers. On top of losing the way of life their families have known for generations, the pittance they've received as compensations does not provide them the means for suitable housing, so they are rendered both jobless and homeless. All the while, government officials are getting wealthier and wealthier on huge profits from these land deals. Protests against these injustices are sprouting up from the north to the south. The BBC reported that on July 18, 2007, peasants waged simultaneous protests in Hanoi and Saigon. The report noted peasants frequently complain about unfair compensation and criticized the laws on land use, which in their opinion have too many loopholes and are too easily abused by corrupt local government officials. Protests can also turn violent. On May 26 of this year, the Bangkok Post reported on the violence surrounding a protest against land seizure for the Nissan refinery 90 miles south of Hanoi. Police opened fire on protesters, killing a 12-year-old boy and wounding a man and a woman.